I'm from Hewlett-Packard, and I'm the EMEA Energy and Eco-Design Manager. But I need to give credit for the HP leadership for what I'm going to show you to Alexandra Dager, my colleague. I'm very happy to present it on her behalf because I have a unique perspective. I was working on a similar project on printers at the same time that she was working on this computer project. So her computer project went in a very different direction in terms of architecture that our printer LCA project went. So it's an interesting comparison and contrast for me. And hopefully you find it interesting as well. What does PAIA stand for? I'm going to tell you once and then you can forget it. It stands for Product Attributes to Impact Algorithm. And that speaks a lot to how the architecture of this LCA system. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. The reason why we developed this was because we were getting inquiries from our customers, large enterprise customers, on what the carbon footprint was for our computers. We weren't getting a lot, but enough that the industry was concerned about how we would answer these inquiries. And the opportunity came up in the computer space to work together. And you can see that we have a consortium between the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, HP, Dell, Lenovo, AMD, Intel, and AUO. This group came together to come up with this carbon footprinting scheme for computers. We cover notebooks, desktops, displays, tablets, and soon we'll include all-in-one computers. It's very important when you're embarking upon an LCA project to know what you're going to do with the results. And for PAIA, the scope was defined, you can sort of break it into two categories. On your left, you'll see insight type uses for PAIA. So we're talking about guiding governmental initiatives, guiding eco-label development, like EPEAT, that's an eco-label for computers. It's used internally within HP for design for the environment. I'm very passionate about good design, and I think design for the environment is an important part of good design. We use it for customer inquiries, like I mentioned before. We also use it within HP for reporting out our corporate carbon footprint and for developing goals for reducing that. Here's an example result for PAIA. I'm an engineer, so I really like complicated slides, and this one certainly fits that bill. If you look at a laptop, it's a complicated device, and it's got a lot of subsystems to it. This particular laptop has three main contributors. The display, the PWB, the main circuit board, and the use phase are the three top contributors. And then 25% of the overall impact comes from everything else. So this is a very complicated system, and you can imagine that the supply chain behind it is even more complicated. The point of PAIA was to simplify that complexity by working together and gathering information across all these different manufacturers. MIT led the integration. And the way it works is it's just a calculator. MIT decided, they determined what were the key attributes that drove the carbon footprint of a computer. And those attributes make sense. The screen size, the amount of RAM, the type of processor that you have. So all of those are inputs into this calculator. Then we gathered primary data, filled that in with secondary data, primarily from EcoInvent, and we come up with a carbon footprint out the other side. The only thing that's unique to each manufacturer and to each device beyond the parameters of the device is the energy consumption. So we use the Energy Star energy consumption to tailor the result to each device that we're looking at. Along the way, this group ran into several challenges, and we heard a common theme in the previous presentations about difficulty getting data, inconsistency in calculations. And one way that we addressed those challenges was together as an industry consortium, working through another industry consortium called the EICC, that's the Electronics Industry Citizenship Coalition, and we developed an allocation scheme that customized the allocation practices by the type of component that we're looking at in PAIA. I will also mention that there's a standard, actually it's a technical report being developed by this group that addresses streamlined methods for carbon footprinting of computers. And so that would allow any other approach to carbon footprinting that's streamlined like PAIA is to be more or less harmonized with the PAIA approach. Notice what I didn't talk about, which is comparing products across manufacturers. So what you can do with PAIA is you can compare two products. You can compare a product with a 15-inch screen to a 17-inch screen, and you can see what the difference is in the supply chain impacts and in the energy impacts. But you can't compare this Apple laptop to an HP laptop because we're not customizing beyond the energy portion of the assessment. So again, why are we doing this? One use that we've used within HP is to publish our own carbon footprint. And we're one of the first companies in the world to publish it all the way through Scope 3 across our entire company, which is $112 billion in revenue. So we use PAIA for the computer portion of this, of estimating our carbon footprint, all the way from supply chain into use and end of life. We've also published goals to reduce our impact in each of those main areas. We have a goal to reduce our supply chain impact by 20% by 2020, our own impact, operations, 20% by 2020, and the use phase of our products by 40% by 2020. And PAIA allowed us to do those what-if scenarios. How would we get to those goals? What would we have to change? It gave us insight into how our products worked and how customers were using them to figure out how we could make those sorts of goals. Another project that has sort of been, was born out of the PAIA group is an effort to reduce the fluorinated greenhouse gas emissions during LCD display manufacture. Fluorinated greenhouse gases used in LCD display manufacture are very potent and very persistent. So the global warming potential of SF6 is something like 23,000 times that of a kilogram of CO2. So it's very important that we not emit that into the atmosphere. There are technical ways for the LCD manufacturers to abate those emissions. They just don't have the business case to do that. And no one company, HP, Apple, or Lenovo, whoever else, can ask those manufacturers to reduce those emissions because we don't have the leverage. We share our supply chain. These products have a lot in common. So we need to work together as an industry to make those sorts of changes. What's nice about PAIA is that we all agreed that there is a problem and we identified the location, what I just described, these fluorinated greenhouse gases. So we moved the conversation forward from is there a problem to there is a problem, what can we do about it? The next steps for this project are to, the current plan is to integrate these, a system by which the computer manufacturers would work together with the display providers to reduce those gases through the IEEE 1680.1, the EP eco-label for computers that's currently being renewed or updated right now. And so in that forum, that's where we're going to put in the mechanisms, the framework for making those sorts of reductions. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Do you have any questions?